What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. Week 14 is actually not quite over yet because we've got a couple of games today, but we're going to go ahead and do our takeaways from Week 14 here in this video. It was kind of a quiet week again, and there were a lot of big games. This was a very exciting weekend coming up. We knew there'd be some big games, and there would be some close finishes. I mean, we knew that coming in, but the question was, would we see any big upsets? Would we see any big changes in the playoff picture? And we really didn't get that. And that's really my first takeaway. It's that the playoff field is set. We know the four teams, unless we get upsets in the conference championship games. So there's a few different things here. Alabama took care of business against LSU. I don't think anybody really expected them not to. And they're going to take care of business against Arkansas. And assuming they beat Florida, which they'll be favored in that game, they will make the college football playoff. Even with a loss, I kind of think that they will get in. But anyways, assuming they went out and they are expected to do so, they're in. We know that with Notre Dame and Clemson, they're done in the regular season. There's no chance of an upset there. So it all comes down to the conference championship game, the ACC conference championship game. Clemson is going to be favored in that game, and if they win, both teams are in. It's set. Now, if there's an upset, if Notre Dame beats Clemson, and they absolutely could. I mean, when you watch these two teams, they both look great at times, but they both looked a little shaky at times. Really, even going back to this Saturday, and we'll talk about that in a second, but assuming Clemson beats Notre Dame, those two teams will be in. And then the drama comes down to Ohio State, Texas A&M, Cincinnati. I think it's clear now that Ohio State, if they win, they will be in, even if they don't play Michigan on Saturday. The Big Ten is already working, I believe, I don't know if it's official, but they're going to change the rules so that Ohio State can go to the Big Ten championship game, and they don't even need to win that game against Michigan. They will be in the Big Ten championship now, and even if they do play Michigan, they're going to win that game easily. I think we all know that. So Ohio State is pretty much in. It would be a shocker if they lost to Northwestern. I mean, they are, again, pretty much a lock now to make the college football playoff. Really impressed with their performance against Michigan State. You look at the Michigan State team that has beat Northwestern last week, so this is not a bad team. And Ohio State was missing 23 players in this game, including starters on the offensive line and on defense. And I think that really just gave them the motivation that they needed. The young guys stepped up, especially on the offensive line. They really weren't. I didn't really see any major struggles there. Justin Fields played really well. The receivers, so talented here for Ohio State. And, I mean, defense played a great game. This was the best game they played all year, and it was without some of their starters. So I think that's really going to impress the committee, and it just shows you what this team is capable of when they turn it on, when they play up to their potential. Ohio State now, I think, is pretty much a lock to make the college football playoff. There's not going to be a discussion if they go, unless they lose, unless there's an upset. I'm sorry, there's not going to be a discussion about Texas A&M or Cincinnati. Ohio State will be the team that gets in. I think the committee has to be pretty happy with how their rankings have played out when you look at where they rank BYU and then BYU losing to Coastal Carolina, things like that. I think the committee, again, is pretty happy with how their rankings are right now, and I don't think there's really going to be any significant changes. So the playoff field is set unless we get upsets. And the way it's gone the last several weeks, I don't think we're going to get any upsets. It seems like let's just go ahead and play the playoff. I mean, it seems like we're never going to get any drama here down the stretch. I think last week was the first time the top 7 had all won or something like that. Well, they all won again this weekend, so we've done it 2 weeks in a row. And we're really supposed to be, this is supposed to be Selection Sunday. Yesterday was supposed to be the conference championship games, and we still got another week in the regular season and then the conference championship games. So we're just kind of dragging this thing out, but it kind of feels like, again, those 4 teams are set. The playoff field is set. Unless, Notre Dame, like I said, Notre Dame would absolutely beat Clemson. I think that's more likely than Florida beating Alabama. And if that happens, Clemson might be out, and we might see Texas A&M or Cincinnati get in there. And of course, if Florida does beat Alabama, they're in. So there's maybe some drama still left in this thing, but it feels like, honestly, it's over. We've got our 4 teams. Let's go play the playoff. But I'm not complaining because I love this extra football in December. It's going to be awesome. So I'm really glad that we are getting this. But I'm just saying, we just need to go ahead and play these conference championship games because the regular season at this point is not really all that important. There aren't any big games left. There aren't any real opportunities for the top 4 teams to lose. until we get to the conference championship game. So let's go to my number 2 takeaway. The pressure is building, but the top 6 take care of business. So we saw A&M have to come back in the fourth quarter against Auburn. We saw Notre Dame start really slow against Syracuse. Clemson started slow against Virginia Tech. Florida a little bit slow against Tennessee. So you see the pressure is starting to build for these teams, but they all took care of business. They all won their games. And you'd wonder, maybe the pressure will get to a team. Again, I don't really see it happening. Florida, I believe, plays LSU. Texas A&M, they still got a couple of interesting games with Ole Miss and Tennessee, but I don't really see anything happening here. So, but Alabama, Ohio State, they didn't have any signs of pressure. They were ready to go from the beginning, dominated their games. Those were on this weekend, those look like the 2 most impressive teams in college football. So that's my number 2 takeaway. We thought we might see some interesting games, some interesting outcomes with the top 6 early on, but they all bounced back, took care of business, and won their games. Let's go to number 3. Coastal Carolina is no fluke. What a win over BYU. And some people are going to say, well, BYU is just not that good. Coastal Carolina beat them, but BYU had not beaten anybody. They're really not that good of a team. So neither one of these teams are all that great. And then you might have another argument where you're going to say, look at what Coastal Carolina did. They beat an undefeated BYU team. This is a team that deserves a playoff spot. Well, I'm kind of in the middle. I think the committee, as far as where they rank these teams, was pretty accurate. Obviously, Coastal Carolina should now be ahead of BYU. To me, these are top 20 teams. I look at the game. I watched the whole game. Now, these are good football teams. They could beat a team like Miami or Indiana or Oklahoma or Iowa State. They could absolutely win a game like that. I think both teams could. But could they beat Alabama or Notre Dame or Clemson or Ohio State? No, I don't think so. I don't think they would win against any of the top 4, top 6 teams. Cincinnati would be interesting. But, yeah, this is a good team. This is a really good team. They deserve a top 15 ranking, in my opinion. Was really impressed with their performance here against BYU. We thought that they might have a problem at the line of scrimmage because BYU is a lot bigger, but they held their own and ran the ball really well, controlled the clock. Just a very impressive performance by Coastal Carolina. I was really impressed with them. I still think BYU is a good team as well, but Coastal Carolina, absolutely a top 15 team, and they have really shocked the world this year. All right, my number 4 takeaway, the Big 12 Championship game is set. We're going to see Iowa State versus Oklahoma in a rematch. Should be a great game, but I think coming into this week, we pretty much expected it to go this way. We expected these 2 teams to make it. They've now locked up their spots. Iowa State was just really impressive against West Virginia. They have really impressed, and I think that's why they're ranked so high. If you look at how they've played these last few games, the win over Texas and a couple of very impressive blowout wins, Iowa State's looking like a top 10 team right now, and I think that's why they are ranked where they are in the playoff rankings. Really impressed with them. Oklahoma, not a great performance against Baylor, but they took care of business. They never really, there's never really a chance of them losing this game. They controlled it and were able to win this game. So we will see Iowa State versus Oklahoma in a rematch in the Big 12 Championship game. And you have to wonder now, could both teams possibly make it into a New Year's Six Bowl? If the game's really close and the teams are ranked high enough, we might see both of these teams in a New Year's Six Bowl, which could be really interesting for the Big 12, as much as we've kind of thought the Big 12 was down this year. Imagine getting 2 teams in a New Year's Six Bowl. That would be big for them. And then the number 5 takeaway for me, it's the Pac-12. It's a mess. The Pac-12 is just a mess. Everyone thought, including me, I'll be the first to admit it, I was absolutely wrong, but everyone thought that Oregon and USC were pretty much locks, especially Oregon, to make it to the Pac-12 Championship game. Both teams will probably go undefeated. Maybe they get upset somewhere. Maybe they lose one game. But all of a sudden, who knows what's going to happen? So in the North, Oregon now has 2 losses after they were upset by Cal. This is just crazy. Washington gets upset, thought that they were going to maybe emerge and be the team out of the Pac-12. They now have a loss. They'll play Oregon, and the winner of that game probably is going to make it into the Pac-12 Championship game, but I don't even know at this point. Stanford's there with 2 losses. Washington State only has 1 loss, but they've only played a couple of games. I don't know if they would even qualify. I don't even know what the rules are. It's just a mess. It's a mess. I don't know this to be a fact, but I kind of think it's going to be Oregon versus Washington. I think that's going to determine the North. since Oregon State lost. But I really don't know, and maybe you Pac-12 experts can help out on this, because this whole conference is just a mess right now. They've had so many cancellations already, and they weren't going to play that many games to begin with. It's just crazy in the Pac-12. And then you go to the South, where the two teams that could be undefeated, USC and Colorado, they're not even going to play each other because their game got canceled. Come on, Pac-12, just schedule this game for next week. What's so hard about that? Why not let the two undefeated teams play? I don't understand this one at all. Maybe they will still do that. They've been flexible moving games around, so I don't see why you don't do that. Let these two teams decide, because I believe the way it would go right now, if they both do finish undefeated, USC would go because they're going to play more games, and that's just crazy to me. So come on, Pac-12, you can get this right. Schedule USC versus Colorado next week, assuming USC wins tonight. Again, there is a Pac-12 game tonight, USC and Washington State. Don't forget about that. And I kind of thought about waiting and doing this video on Monday, but I decided to go ahead and do it today. So that would obviously change things. Then Colorado looks like they're going to be the team that wins the South. And again, this whole conference, this whole thing in the Pac-12 is just a big mess. And I'm not saying it's the Pac-12's fault. It's just crazy we've seen all these upsets as well. I mean, it's a mess because of kind of the situation that they put themselves in. But it's also a mess just because we didn't see two teams win their divisions like we thought they would. We thought two teams would clearly win their divisions, and it's just not happening. So it's just crazy in the Pac-12. It's not going to affect the playoff at all because there is no chance a Pac-12 team gets in. I eliminated the Pac-12 last week. It will affect who makes it to a New Year's Six Bowl, because the Pac-12 champion will get in, whoever that turns out to be. So again, craziness in the Pac-12. We'll see how it closes out. Not all that important for most college football fans, but it's very interesting, very entertaining to watch this thing play out. So I think there will be plenty of people that are intrigued by the Pac-12. So those are my takeaways from Week 14. Week 15 probably going to be quiet as far as the playoff picture goes. We're probably not going to see anyone in the top 6 or 7 lose. I mean, it just is what it is. And we've kind of seen those teams separate themselves. And not just that, but it's just the fact that there are no big games left on the schedule for those teams. So when you look at this next week, it's really going to be about fighting for, and it's not even about conference championships, because those are pretty much all set. You've got Alabama versus Florida in the SEC. You've got Northwestern, Ohio State, Pac-12. We have no idea. Big 12 is set. ACC is set. So yeah, it's not going to be a huge weekend in terms of conference championship races or the playoff. But you do still see some matchups that could affect the New Year's Six. And, of course, every college football game is important. I mean, if you're a college football fan, you know every game is a big game. That's what's great about college football. So I think it'll be an entertaining weekend as we get ready to go into conference championship weekend. And that is going to be great. This year, I don't think we have ever seen conference championship games matter as much as they matter this year. There's playoff implications everywhere. Of course, New Year's Six implications. Just a lot of things going on conference championship weekend. And not only the conference championships, but we still have a good bit of regular season games to play on that day. So that is going to be an exciting day of college football, a day like we have never had in the history of college football, a day where we have so many big conference championship games and also so many big regular season games. So I'm really looking forward to that, but we got to get through week 15 first, and maybe something big will happen, something exciting. Who knows? But those, again, are my takeaways from Week 14. I would love to know your thoughts, your takeaways, so leave them down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.